Cam Heyward of the Steelers eyed for a possible trade? The name of Pittsburgh Steelers defensive captain, Cam Heyward, has emerged as the top trade option according to Pro Football Network, generating excitement and speculation among the team's fans. Current contract situation. Currently, the Steelers are in the midst of contract negotiations with Heyward. Although the player has actively participated in organized team activities, OTA, and minicamp, optimism about signing an extension before the start of the season is not very high. An early farewell? If an agreement is not reached, the Steelers will have to decide whether to let Heyward walk at the end of his contract next season or opt to trade him beforehand. While a trade does not seem likely at the moment, the option remains on the table. According to Pro Football Network, this would be one of the easiest decisions for the team to make. Heyward's value. Heyward, who has cemented himself as a legend within the franchise, only managed 2 sacks last season due to an injury that required surgery. Even so, the Steelers could save $16 million if they decide to trade him in 2024. Looking ahead. Despite the speculation, it is most likely that Heyward will stay with the Steelers for this season. Negotiations will continue, and even if an agreement is not reached, the team will need their captain for the run towards Super Bowl 2024. From Heyward's perspective, winning a Super Bowl in Pittsburgh has a sentimental value that would be hard to find with another team. And there you have it, Saints fans and football enthusiasts. Is Cam Heyward of the Steelers being eyed for a possible trade? This key defensive captain of Pittsburgh might be facing an uncertain future. Do you think the Steelers should negotiate his trade? What impact would this have on the upcoming season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like if you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for all the latest news and exclusive analysis on the New Orleans Saints and more. See you next time.
I think this year, Pittsburgh explodes onto the scene. The offensive line leads the way. The youth leads the way.
Their defense is what's going to have to keep them in the game, so they got to find as many ways as they possibly can to open up their offense and have an extra dynamic element, and I think Justin Fields brings that to the table.
And then you bring in a Hall of Fame talent quarterback in Russell Wilson. The expectations should be Super Bowl.
You know, you guys, I'm just going to go ahead and jump straight into the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point because this team, man, really is starting to look good, especially with everything they've added so far this offseason. They needed to come into this offseason and make a few moves if they really wanted their team to have a chance to be a contender, and I think they've done that by not only adding key pieces on the offense, but also adding key pieces on the defense. They had some holes they needed to fill, and I think they filled pretty much all of them, and with where they're sitting at right now, if everyone stays healthy, I really do think this team has a chance to be a true contender. But before we get into why I believe that exactly, if you like Pittsburgh Steelers content just like this, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any Steelers videos for the remainder of this offseason. Okay, so to get back on topic with the Pittsburgh Steelers, this team, of course, is coming off a season where they didn't play the greatest. They made the playoffs barely, which was pretty impressive in my opinion, considering everything they went through. But as we all know, they ended up losing in the first round to the Buffalo Bills in a game where no one expected them to win. I mean, they had so many injuries throughout the season, and they were down to their third quarterback. So while we wanted them to win, I don't think anyone really expected them to, so it made sense that they lost. But even though I think they overachieved what they were supposed to accomplish with everything they went through, they still needed to come into this offseason and do a couple different things if they really wanted to give themselves a chance in the upcoming season, and that's exactly what they've done. I think we need to start on the offensive side of the ball because coming into this offseason, the biggest need they had here was the offensive line, and man oh man did they find a way to go out and address it. The biggest and most important moves they made here, of course, came in the draft with their first and second round pick, because in the first round, they got an absolute steal at pick 19 by taking Troy Fautanu, and in the second round, they were able to arguably get the best center in this draft class in Zach Frazier, which is a position they desperately needed to fill. Adding both of these guys really fills out the offensive line, and it makes them immediately become a lot better than they were previously. And when you look at them as a complete unit now, they actually look like they have a chance to be one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. You of course have Broderick Jones, who's coming off a pretty solid rookie season with all things considered. You have the guy you added last offseason in Isaac Samalu, who also is a really good player, as we all know. And you already had James Daniels, who's a pretty good veteran. So to add Zach Frazier at the center position and to add Troy Fatanu at the other tackle position fills out the offensive line with a really good player at pretty much every spot. So I expect this team to not only have time while throwing the ball, but to also be able to run the ball in the trenches due to this. Having an offensive line that can do these type of things is exactly what makes an offense run, and I think we're going to see the Steelers lean on them a lot, especially since Arthur Smith is their new offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith, as we all know, is a guy that gets hated on a lot for what he did over in Atlanta, but this is a guy that we saw put together some of the best run games ever over in Tennessee, and I think he's going to have a chance to repeat that same success in Pittsburgh with what he has in the running back room and what he has now in the offensive line. When it comes to the running back room, we really saw the two guys in this room start to turn it on as the season went on in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, because down the stretch, we started to see these guys get more and more efficient, and it's a big reason why they were even able to make the playoffs. Najee Harris, of course, is the power back, and he put up a pretty good season last year being a power back, rushing for over 1,000 yards while averaging over 4 yards a carry, which is exactly what you want from this type of back. And then Jaylen Warren is the perfect guy to pair with him, considering he's the guy that's super fast and efficient, and he showed that by rushing for over 780 yards while only getting 149 carries, which means he averaged over 5 yards a carry, which proves my point that this is a perfect duo. I think we'll see Jaylen Warren get a little bit more touches in the upcoming season due to what he was able to do last year, but I still think Najee needs to take most of the workload so Jaylen Warren can be his most explosive self. And man, when both of these guys are working together and they're splitting carries, there's not many defenses that are going to be able to slow them down, and that's why I think this passing attack, even though they might not have the greatest weapons ever, is still going to be pretty dominant. The most important thing when it comes to this passing attack, of course, is the addition of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields at the quarterback position. And while I think the starter is going to be Russell Wilson week 1, I wouldn't be mad if it was Justin Fields, and I also wouldn't be surprised if Justin Fields took over mid-season. But either way it goes, I think either quarterback that ends up starting is going to be an upgrade from what they had last season. Russell Wilson, of course, is a veteran that is going to play pretty efficiently, just like he did last year. And then Justin Fields is a guy who's extremely athletic that gives your offense a ton of upside. So while they bring different things to the table, they're both going to make you better. And when you consider what weapons they have to throw to, I think Arthur Smith has a decent amount to work with. George Pickens, of course, is an elite receiver 1 in this league, and he's proven that over the past 2 years, and I expect him to only get better with better quarterback play. And then to go along with him, you went out and you signed Quez Watkins, who's an extremely fast guy that can be a vertical threat for you, and you went out and drafted Roman Wilson in the 3rd round of the draft, which I think was an absolute steal. Roman Wilson is a guy that has a ton of potential, and he showed that all over his college tape at Michigan, and I think he's going to be a great receiver 2 on this team to go along with George Pickens. And then I think Quez Watkins and Calvin Austin are going to be a great 3rd and 4th option that can be used in a lot of versatile ways with the speed they bring to the table. I think this offense is going to lean on the run, and they're going to be a ground and pound team, and because of that, it's going to allow the offense to use a lot of play action to get guys wide open down the field, which is going to make up an offense that I think has a chance to be a top 10 unit. And if you pair a top 10 offense with what this defense added and what they already were, this is when this team, like I said earlier, might become a contender. When it comes to the defense, I don't think they needed to add a ton to be great because they were already pretty solid last year, but they still had a few holes, and if they found a way to fill those holes, they were going to become an elite defense, and I think that's exactly what they became. You, of course, already had TJ Watt, who's arguably the best edge rusher in football, and then to go along with him, you have what some people would consider the best secondary edge rusher in Alex Highsmith, which makes up one of the best edge duos in all of football. And then when you move on to the interior, you still have Cam Heyward, who's a veteran guy that plays at an extremely high level when he's healthy. And you have Keanu Benton, who's coming off a great rookie season, and he's a guy that I think is only going to get better, which means that this defensive line overall has pretty much every spot filled, and it should lead to them being pretty dominant. I think they're going to be pretty solid against the run, and I think they're going to be an elite pass rushing unit, which is all you can really ask for, especially when you consider what they were able to add to the linebacker room. The first guy, of course, and probably the biggest addition here is Patrick Queen because of how good of a player he is, and he is the exact type of guy that you want leading your linebackers. He's an extremely smart guy that played on a great Ravens defense last year, and he put up pretty solid numbers, and I think he's going to be able to keep that same production in Pittsburgh. And then to go along with him, you also went out in the draft and took that guy Peyton Wilson in the 4th round, which was another absolute steal, and I think he's going to come in and have an immediate impact as well. He's a guy that wants to hit you hard, and he flies around the field, which is exactly what Mike Tomlin wants on his defense. And when you look at both of those two guys together, they really do make up a pretty solid duo. Not to mention, you still have Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, who played pretty well for you last year, which means you have an overall linebacker room that is pretty deep and pretty talented, which means your front 7 overall should be really good. I don't think anyone would argue against that, and when you pair with that you also have a secondary that's probably going to be pretty good as well, that's when everything really starts to come together. You of course have Joey Porter Jr., who's coming off a great rookie season, and I truly do think this guy has the potential to be one of the best corners in the NFL. And then to go along with that, you made a trade to go out and get Dante Jackson to be your corner number 2, and I think he's a perfect guy to pair with what Joey Porter Jr. brings to the table. I think that's going to be a pretty solid duo. And then on the back end of everything, you still have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who I think is the best safety in football, and you went out and signed another great safety in Deshaun Elliott to pair with him, which is why I think this secondary is going to be pretty good. They might not be the greatest thing ever, but they don't really have to be when you consider how good the front 7 is, and that's why I think that this defense is also going to be top 10 to pair with the top 10 offense, and if that happens, this team really is going to be scary.